Welcome to Masterclass Monday. I'm Giveton GELIN, the winner of the LetterOne Rising Stars Jazz Award North America edition as of recent of 2019. The LetterOne Rising Stars Jazz Award aims to find and support outstanding young jazz talent since its launch in 2017. It has been endorsed by many world-class jazz stars including Jimmy Callum, George Benson, and many others. The winners are awarded contests at major festivals around the world, such as DC Jazz Festival, Bruno Jazz Festival, and Montreal Jazz Festival, just to name a few. This year, events have unfortunately taken a different course. And the jazz industry is on pause, festivals have been cancelled, and we are postponed. But worse still, millions of people have been forced to self-isolate. Children are mostly unable to go to school. So we felt that if you can't come to see us play, we would come to you to have some fun and try to encourage you to play in your own home, as well as encourage you to pick up an instrument. I would also like to commemorate the life of some of those who have been lost to COVID-19. I hope that today I can bring some light, fun, and rhythm into your life, inspire you to be positive, creative people. Today I'll be covering various topics about my introduction to jazz music, my approach to the trumpet, my overall concept about music. I'm from the Bahamas, so I picked up the instrument in a marching band. The band had a shortage of trumpet players, so I volunteered as a drummer to play the trumpet. And fortunately, my father, he had a trumpet maybe about 15 years ago that he never used. And he was the one that ended up showing me the first notes on the trumpet. And so that's how I got my start. I was always curious growing up. I was always asking a lot of questions. And I used Google and YouTube as huge resources when I got into music. I was just looking up greatest trumpet players in the world, and find all these names pop up. I can remember the first time I heard live jazz was at this live concert series in the Bahamas. It was at Jacaranda House. And this is where I met Adrian Diagala, who became my mentor and also another father figure in my life. He would give me records, teach me about the meaning behind what the masters played, which I think is really important to know. A lot of the times, we prioritize the technical ability to execute playing this music, but overlook the intent. The key to it is realizing how this art form is interconnected with life and our human experiences are shared through this medium. Adrian would take me on all of his gigs in the Bahamas. I was young. The first time I can remember playing him, I was about 13. And I remember it took me a long time to get into the swing of things. But this experience helps me to navigate, which brings me to the next point. This is also an important part of playing. Being able to play with a group of people, right? And to be able to know how to navigate and create the best music possible. I personally like to think of it as developing the ability to hear all band members around you while being able to hear yourself. A huge reason why people default into muscle memory is that they struggle with hearing themselves when attempting to hear everybody else. This skill could only be developed by playing with your peers or frequently approaching improvising with that goal in mind. What I mean by that is every time you pick up your instrument, you are trying to hear yourself, and through that repetition, you will get closer to that goal. Through Adrian's guidance, I was able to graduate high school and move to conservatories in the US. This was a great opportunity for me because I went to Oberlin to study with the great Eddie Henderson. So after a year there, I ended up going to Juilliard the year after to go to New York. This was where I was able to connect with another one of my trumpet heroes, Roy Hargrove, who recently just passed. And he became another mentor to me and a friend. During the time I met Roy, he was about giving back, and he would sit around and share about his life and his career. He was also someone who taught by example. Like, I learned so much about how to lead and orchestrate the band through seeing him live at either his live shows or maybe at the sessions in Smalls. He was also someone that was very personable, I find. Even though a lot of the times it depends on where you meet him, but in the right situation, Roy was such a good person to be around. Also, Wynton Marsalis is also a great mentor of mine. He's also the head of the jazz department at Juilliard, where I'm still attending. I've known him pretty early on. I would reach out to him from the Bahamas all the time prior to me coming to the US. So he is good about being connected with the young generation of musicians as well. Now, I lead my very own quintet. I have been fortunate enough to play with this band in the beginning when I first moved to New York. And we've been playing at many different clubs, Smoke Jazz Club, Small Jazz Club, Jazz Gallery, different clubs in the city. And the goal with this band is to create music that's an extension of how I approach music on my trumpet. It's an extension of my artistic mission or goals. Actually, just recently released my debut album, True Design, which features this quintet. So if you're watching this, you can go and look that up as well. Speaking of the trumpet and my approach, first off, when I think of the trumpet, I think of it in three fundamental parts: sound and air. I connect those two things together. Air being how do you distribute the sound throughout the instrument. Sound being your concept of what the sound is supposed to sound like. When I get up or any time of the day that I pick up the trumpet for the first time, I always aim for the sound to be evenly distributed. So when I play the first notes, a G in the staff, I aim for the note to be evenly distributed, and there's a feeling that you get when that happens. Example. See, I'm getting closer to it. It's important to me to be able to get the center. And you speak about technique. Technique is really having care, right? You want to be able to care for everything. And the amount of detail that you pay to sound, the better your sound will be. So for me, I try to tackle that, and I don't leave that note until I feel there's a center. And after I feel there's a center, then I move on to the next note, etc., etc. The next fundamental part is flexibility and slurring. I put these two things together because flexibility being how you can navigate throughout the horn, up and down, and slurring being these exercises that you do to make sure that you can be able to do that. So you're doing I, and you want to make sure when you're playing these notes that you can feel as a center. The goal is not to play them fast. The goal is to be able to get clearly both notes as clear as you can get them. This helps if you play it up into the upper register, build a lot of muscle strength. An exercise I like to use is the Arbenz page 44. And so the third fundamental part is tonguing and articulation. Tonguing is probably the most important part because it's the execution of everything. It's what helps everything get out. Articulation, some of the exercises I can think on top of my head is clock studies. It's one of the best for being able to just tongue repetitively until you can feel the center. And it's the same thing when it comes to tonguing. You want to feel the center of the tongue. You want to hear that the note is evenly distributed. That sounds closer to it. And if there's anything that you notice is that everything that I'm trying to do it with as much detail as I can. Because if you deal with the detail now, when you get on the bandstand, a lot of those problems that you that you may face when trying to deal with the instrument, you've probably already taken care of them throughout your daily routine. And routine is so important. It's the way of the trumpet. It's habitual. It's about consistency. You must do it every day. It's the only way you're going to get results. I think of the instrument, the trumpet, as an extension of my voice. I used to sing in primary school, and by the time puberty hit, I think things changed a little bit, but I never lost the concept. Uh, my approach is to think melody at all times when I'm playing. Because it is a melodic instrument, I'm always thinking note to note. I'm always thinking of that. I'm never thinking of anything else but how can I move from one note and create intervallic distances that create emotion. I recently had a question where someone asked me, how do I differentiate melody and bebop? And my answer was, I think of them as one and the same. A lot of the times people try to go into these cliches or, bebop, I guess, licks. And the challenge that I always put myself through, even when I first started playing, was to be able to hear everything. I wanted to be able to hear all the melodies that I wanted to hear, or what I was truly hearing. Also, if I wanted to play bebop, I wanted to truly hear it. I wanted to hear every intervallic distance. I wanted to hear every half step. An example being, if you were to play, say, Donnelly, every distance in that melody, even though it's a lot of content, you want to be able to set those high standards for yourself. Not doing things the easy way will not give results. If you train yourself to do things the hard way, basically hearing every intervallic relationship, so when it comes to improvising, you'll be able to make decisions melodically and play bebop language and hear it all. It should be all fully encompassing. So that's my approach, and that's how I play everything. Every note that comes out of this instrument, I want to be able to hear it. I want it to be something that I intended. And this approach doesn't happen quickly. It is a process. You must develop your ear to be able to hear that information, especially bebop. The key is to approach playing with this mindset. The mindset is most important. It will be difficult to do so in the beginning, but it is how you truly challenge yourself every time you pick up your instrument. And as time progresses, it will only get better from there. That's also a way to build your ears along with transcribing records. Another point I'd like to bring is internalizing music. Because we are in an age of streaming and having access to so much information, it is hard for us to spend time with the recording. This is important. It's important practice. It helps with understanding the role of every band member. The execution of what happens musically in our practice room and on the bandstand are two different things. If we are really trying to play the music that connects everyone together, it is through us understanding everyone's role. Spending time with records also develop a natural, intuitive ability to make sound decisions in musical situations. The goal is to be able to come into a musical setting and create the best musical possible, no matter when, where, or who you're playing with. Having a good sense of musicality is important, and the only way you can be able to do that is to internalize a lot of music. And this is so important, especially when it comes to this art form. If you are an instrumentalist, someone that do not play the piano, you're trying to get deep into music, deep into harmony, or trying to improvise, you have to get familiar with the piano because it's first off the best visual representation of how music works. You get an understanding of how sound moves upwards and downwards. It's logical. It's the most logical representation that there is. To segue that, I just want to talk about composition, and I want to tackle the three fundamental parts of music, right? Melody. Roy had a great quote about melody. He said, "If you want to become more melodic, you must learn songs." He was a big advocate for learning the American song, but attempting to do this will only improve your sensibilities for what intervals create an arc or what melodic intervals are effective in certain musical situations. How can we send direct emotion across listeners in 3 notes? Get where I'm going? It's about being able to internalize so many melodies where you then are able to create melodies of your own. This connects us to harmony. So I think of harmony as just melodies, and talking about melodies, this is how I approach my instrument, trumpet. So I'm always thinking melodies, and melody is so important. It's one of the tools that we have as composers to touch people. It's one of the most effective tools that we have, right? And I think of harmony as melodies happening simultaneously. If you really think about it, that's really what it is. When I sit down on the piano to write music, I'm trying to hear every individual note I play on the instrument and use that as my reference point into building soundscapes. It's also great to stumble upon new sounds that you might have not explored. There's also a quote from Larry Willis where he says that he thinks of the top voice and the bottom voice, and what happens in the middle are just textures. This viewpoint makes music very malleable, which is what we're aiming for. We want to create musical development that connects from note to note to ensure that we move with every voice with care. There's something that connects here. Is you want to be able to create music and you want to be able to create it at a level or high quality, you must pay attention to all details. And I think care always comes up because I think it's the best word I can find to think about how do you treat it? Do you treat it with care? Do you treat every note with care? This is why voice leading is so quintessential in composition. So how do we make sense of this? So I'll share one of my tunes, which we actually played in a performance, and talk about some of the things we utilize. Uh, so interlude. So we have it where we start off with A flat major, right? We go to the 2, 3. Question? Answer. Then we go off to the next chapter. So if you notice, a lot of what's happening here is development. I like to think about it in the same way because there are a lot of things as far as humans and how we are able to stay captivated. It's through making connections, and if you can create connections within anything, people are going to stay engaged because there's something they can latch on to. So we have question and answers. We have repetition of musical material. So when we go to this next chapter, and then we repeat the same material. And then now we quote the beginning. Now for me, an important part about composition is really trying to find out your origins and music that's part of your DNA. What I mean by that is music that you grew up listening to, music that you naturally have an understanding for because it's something that you probably heard when you were a kid. For me, I grew up in church, so a lot of the arcs and melody and harmonic choices that I make is very natural for me to think like this, and this is how I'm able to be authentic to my artistic voice. And so Also, it's also cyclical because if you think about it, because we're quoting the beginning with the end, so we can technically say, ole, 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 ole. So we go from E minor, E minor with D in the bass, to C major. We go to D major, and then we go to do, to G with a B in the bass, O, C minor, O, B flat. You know, so basically you have the same thing that happened in E minor. So E minor to D in the bass with E minor on top. Then you have here C minor with B flat in the bass. So you have so many things that are going on within this piece of music that are all connecting each other. They're all saying hi. Every piece is, every phrase is connecting with the other one. So there's cousins, there are sisters, there are brothers. So and this is where we started. So we can technically say So you see how it's cyclical. And a lot of my compositions are very much cyclical. Cyclical because I believe that when you're creating music, especially my philosophy, if it has a home, if it has somewhere to go back to, and then we can create more development the next time we come back home. So we engage them the first time, and then once we come back home, we can create more development and go somewhere else. That just seems to me a good decision to make, and that's just my opinion. I will actually be having charts to that. I can send out to people that'd like to have maybe a look at it and see how things connect, even with rhythm. So that's the next part we're going to connect that with. Even with rhythm, everything that we're playing, so even with rhythm, a lot of the rhythms, they're also saying hi to the next brother or neighbor. And so we have so many things that are referencing each other, where when people hear the content, even though it's a 30-second piece of music, there's so much content within it. It forces you to maybe take another listen, I would hope. So we talk about rhythm. I think that rhythm is truly internal. We all have our sense of rhythm. I personally think that rhythm is one of the strongest musical elements that we all at large gravitate to the most. I recommend spending time with recordings with great rhythm sections for jazz musicians. This will help you internalize different rhythmic fields. You now probably have recordings that you've heard when you were a kid, where the rhythm is internalized through just repetition and just hearing it so much. And you want to create the same process when it comes to playing jazz music. This concludes our masterclass. I do hope you've had some fun and look forward to seeing you all post-corona. If you wish to make a donation, there's a donate button below this video to donate to the Louis Armstrong Foundation's Emergency Fund for Jazz Musicians, which is really important. So thank you.